Welcome to the fourth session of Excellence Talk. It's about innovation. Hello, Christian. How are you?
Hello, Murat. I'm grand. How are you?
Thank you. I'm also fine. It's the sunny outside. It's still for after the weekend, so we are all happy. And we have a guest. Welcome, Maria. How are you?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Murat. I'm doing well in San Francisco, as you can see.
Yeah, great. Maria is the transformation lead and entrepreneur. She works in the financial services, and she leads the transformations projects in her company. And also she has also her own business, and she helps other organizations in their innovation journeys. So she's the right person today to talk about innovation. And beforehand, before we will hear from her, I would like to ask Christian, because he assessed many organizations in the world in the different excellence program, and then he has seen many organizations, and the innovation is the powers the excellence. Therefore, that I would like to ask his opinion. What do you think the link between excellence and innovation?
Thank you, Murat. I'm so happy to have Maria today, since innovation is a buzzword right now. Okay, everybody talks about innovation, but nobody seems to know what it really means. During assessments, many organizations try to sell innovation to me, but at the end, if you look closer, you see it's just an improvement or a change. On the other hand, innovation seems to be so important to drive excellence to higher levels. And this is, I think, why we need some enlightenment from you, Maria, to understand how organizations can use innovation to power excellence.
Mm-hmm. I think indeed one of the questions is, what is the definition of innovation, right? And you can find so many on the internet. And as you say, sometimes in companies it's not clear. For me, something that is very important about innovation is that it's indeed this act of creativity, this art of creating something new, but it's something that is significantly different of what exists today, right? So it's not just a small change, but it's something that is going to significantly change the way we do things.
Mm-hmm. So let me just ask you a little question. My wife is busy with Irish dancing. So there's a specific way in Ireland to dance. And usually there are eight people, like 4 couples, and they dance in a square, and they do quite complex things. And of course, this is not allowed right now, and will probably the last sports that will be allowed. So what she's doing since a couple of weeks, she does it online via Zoom. Would that be, I mean, creating, a specific concept by using a completely different media that nobody has used before for Irish dancing? Mm-hmm. Would that be considered innovation?
It's sometimes difficult to assess what's innovation and what's not, right? Because it's depending also to your own perception, right? So I would say if it has significantly changed the way in which your wife is perceiving the dancing, if for her it's creating a real value and it's creating a real change, then it is innovation, right? You cannot draw a line of this is innovation and that's not. I think it depends on how much value is bringing to the people. Mm-hmm. And in this case, if your wife is really happy, then yeah, it's a new innovative way of dancing, right?
I see, yes. Uh-huh.
And innovation is getting more important, especially in the VUCA world, that's what we think, because technological disruption, the world is changing. Also, even the COVID that is also changed this to the world. So how you think that innovation is getting important, or how you think that, especially in this VUCA world, Maria, that could be key for the organizations?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do when we are talking about innovation is we talk about this VUCA environment, and often companies look somewhere else like, this is not affecting us, we're a solid company, our market is stable, we know our clients, we're doing fine. And I think this COVID situation has been really a game changer for so many companies. So I think now it's there, and I think that's one of the things that we were trying to explain before. It's not like something is going to happen and you're going to have years to adapt like before. It's something that can happen from one day to the other, and that's what we have been seeing. And in these situations in which you need to react so fast, it's very important that your company is innovative, and for that you have to be trained. So that's what we also try to explain companies. It's not something you can do from one day to the other, thinking that you will have time to catch up, but it's something that you should start now, because you never know when the next COVID, when the next situation is going to happen. And you need to have your muscles trained, your innovation muscles trained.
It should be the DNA of the organizations. So then it should be part of the culture, isn't it?
Correct. Yes.
As the Peter Drucker say, is the culture eats strategy in breakfast.
Mm.
So I think it's the same. So the culture is the very important. Could you please give some examples? How you think, maybe Christian, also you or Maria, some example of the innovative culture of the innovative companies, how they do look like?
Maria?
Maybe Maria?
So that's a question that we often get as well. And I think here it's also important to mention that innovative cultures are, on the one hand, very cool to work for. So you can find things such as acceptance of mistakes, such as freedom, low hierarchy, extremely collaborative approach. So these are characteristics that we see in very innovative companies. But at the same time as well, we also see things like being very disciplined to implement some of the prototypes. We also see often, for example, you can accept mistakes when you're creating something new, and that leads to learning, but they will be very tough in accepting mistakes, for example, in production or things that are stable, or they're very hard with people that are incompetent, you know? And these are the two sides of innovation. And I think people often see innovation as something only bright, right? Who doesn't want to work in an innovative company? But at the same time, it sometimes can be quite tough.
For sure, for sure.
Many of the aspects that you share with us, Maria, probably have a very strong link to leadership. Would you agree?
Correct. Yeah.
So how can, maybe a question, how can leadership, like from top down, inspire innovation, inspire creativity, lead to innovation, or the opposite? What would be leadership styles that discourage innovation?
I think leadership is indeed super important in innovation, and you need to have someone behind the whole transformation when you are innovating, because otherwise you just won't have the support, right? And what we have to understand is that leadership as well has shifted, right? While before you used to have a leader who would tell you, that's where we are going, that's how we are going to do it, and this is the way that you have to do things. And today leadership has shifted in many ways, in which now leaders are very inspiring, for example, and they give the energy to their people to go through this transformation. So I think this leadership is something that companies have to look into and start also hiring different people, because I think that's something that is key in having a very complementary leadership team, right? That you have different profiles. I think that's also very important for innovation.
I've been working and supporting and assessing very large organizations, but also very small ones. And I have seen different levels of innovation everywhere. Would you give any advice how like a bigger organization can still be innovative? I mean, I have wonderful examples where this was the case. How can innovation be driven even in large organizations?
Well, I think in large organizations, what is important is to have a place where people can be innovative, right? Because often what happens when organizations are growing, they become very strict and very structural and rigid, and they have the rules and procedures and approvals and budget and everything that is basically constraining innovation. So what is important is to create this kind of a hub or of a place where you allow people to be innovative, right? Where you say, this is the place where it's right to make mistakes for learning. This is the place where you can go crazy, right? Where you can bring your Legos and people won't look at you like you're completely crazy. And you have to allow that space. And at the same time, it's very complicated, because you also have to allow the things that come to that place to be afterwards implemented in your company, right? And I think this is the balance that is very difficult to achieve, right? So how would you separate that from your company, have innovation in your hub, and then be able to get those learnings, those products, and get it back into the structured way of working? I think that is a balance that is very difficult to find.
Maybe I know your personal story, Maria, that I would like to also share with everyone. Therefore, I want to ask this question: how your passion about innovation came? Because without passion, you can never do anything. And innovation is a passion for the organizations to generate the values to the world. How your passion on innovation came?
Well, I always say that innovation almost got me fired at the beginning, because it was definitely not in my career. So I was working in finance. I originally studied engineering, and I was working in finance. And I think it was during the MBA that we did together that,
Exactly.
yeah, that I really learned this new way of doing things, that we were really looking into these courses of entrepreneurship, innovation, and especially I think the trip to Silicon Valley and California, and that's maybe why I put this beautiful background, was really a game changer. And I think when I was there, I was in that amazing, vibrant environment of people sharing new ways of doing things, sharing their experiences, this mix of the university, the investors, the startups. I thought it was so fascinating. And I said, okay, I have to take this path, one way or another, I have to take this path. And then I was lucky enough that in my company, I could create my own startup to drive this innovation journey, and that's how everything started. And luckily, I didn't get fired. I managed to create my own position, but I always say it could have ended very badly.
So you started as like a startup in your organization for drive or boost the innovation. So and now you say that you have a position and you have a structure. How it happens? So, and also you have seen the both side, bottom up approach or the top bottom approach. So then how you see how it's balanced, how it can be balanced together?
Well, I would say at the beginning, it was hard because, of course, you're doing something new. You don't really have a sponsor, so you're taking a lot of risks. But at the same time, it was fascinating, right? Because I was with people that had a lot of energy, who wanted to change things. It was really like creating like a real startup, and you have a lot of freedom. We were doing basically what we wanted. And then at a certain point, when management saw the value of it, they said, okay, let's put it structurally in the company. And I think it's there where you realize these both sides of innovation that we were talking about before, of how a startup will go into a bigger company. So you realize that you have to get senior people convinced of what you're doing. So you have to work in things such as benefit management. You have to work into building your center of excellence. You have to look into which people are going to work with you. Start working with external parties. So you also have to look into contracts. So there is a part that is much less sexy about it, but at the same time it's needed, because otherwise, if you continue being a rebel, if you continue being a startup, you won't manage to have the full value of it, right? You will be just the crazy ones that are doing new things. But if you don't change the way you're working, if you don't change your product, then it's not really innovation, right? That's what we were saying. It has to create value.
I see the similarity to this excellence model also, the benefit management, what actually just behind of you, Christian, the excellence model, simple excellence model, and then strategy that you define, your processes that you need to have, because we see that, we want to have innovation, but without a certain model or framework or certain system, it cannot really sustain that. What do you think, Christian?
Yeah, and here's my question, Maria. I think we agree that innovation starts with a spark, with like a creativity spark, and then you develop that into something that that you can sell as a service or a product, and actually and create some benefit or advantage, whatever it is. It doesn't need to be financial, of course. But how long would you say is it from a creative idea to the final thing that you create that creates advantage? Would that be rather hours or days, or could that be weeks or months?
And it could even be years, I would say. It can even be 1 or 2 years, right? I think the first part, and that's where the energy comes from, that is the creation, the analysis, the looking at your customer, you know, having the empathy for the people. That's what comes at the beginning. And I think that's what people see of innovation, right? Like the sexy part of innovation, the part that I also fell in love with. While the second part, where you're talking about implementation, having your products delivered and so on, that can take time, you know? And I think that's something that leaders also need to understand, right? We often see when we are doing the benefit management, okay, but show me what this is going to generate, right? What is it going to bring this year? And I think what leaders need to understand is maybe it won't bring anything this year, you know? Maybe it will be next year, and maybe it will be in 2 years, and maybe this project in particular won't bring anything, right? But what you have to understand is that there will be other projects that will bring something, you know? And it's a different way of understanding benefit management. I think you are also an expert on excellent organizations. When you are assessing CI, the continuous improvement is very different than when you're assessing innovation, right?
And if I'd be a leader of a bigger organization and I'd like to reduce the risk of my innovation, like a process or structure, I think what I keep hearing from you is that keeping close contact to your stakeholders, listen to them on the whole way from the first spark into the product or service that you produce is probably something that we could call risk management in innovation. Would you agree?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think there are several aspects. I think the first one is, of course, start small. I know it's a little bit of a buzz sentence, but it's very important to start small, to start prototyping very soon. And then indeed keep very close collaboration. Well, in the first one with your clients and your customers, and I never see enough of it. You know, everyone thinks I know my clients so well, and yet sometimes when we are in the boot camps and so on, they keep on discovering things that they were completely unaware of. But not only with your clients, I think you also have to keep close collaboration with people within your company, which often we say, okay, this is innovation, you know, and you put 3-4 guys in a separate team, and they are the ones that are innovating. But if they don't talk to HR, if they don't talk to commercial, if they don't talk to product, that doesn't fit, you know. I think it has to be very collaborative as well inside the company. And finally, as well, of course, with your board and with all the other stakeholders that are involved into the process. Because otherwise you realize if you don't involve them soon enough, it often gets killed. And that's why we try to involve people as soon as possible into the process. For example, legal, compliance, risk management, they're very, very soon at the very early stage of our innovation journeys.
That's a very powerful message, I think, and a very practical one as well. And Maria, what do you think, Murat? If you think of your own organization, you work for GC, how do you involve your stakeholders during that journey?
We do have our stakeholder, like our customers, the dental professionals are the key, because we need to understand their needs. And that actually that we have the philosophy that I already mentioned in the first sessions, the SEMUI is the stakeholder understanding. So we try to think from their side, or we try to understand their needs with the SEMUI philosophies continuously. Therefore, the dental profession is a key for us. And then we have key opinion leaders, are also like the certain group of dental professionals, that professors in the industries, that they have also the voice of the dental professional. We have a very good connection with them, and we maintain this continuously. That is a good example of how we understand them, their needs. And also one of the important that what we also link with the leaders should be close to the stakeholder, like walk to talk. So our leaders, an example of, I want to give again, the owner of the company, Mr. Makoto Nakao, and whenever he visits to another city and he visits another dentist, to understand, to talk with them. Without understanding, without talking with them, you can never understand their needs, and you cannot be innovative. There you can create this as the product or services that you can provide them. So I think it's an example I can give from my own organization.
Fantastic examples. Maria, do you have any other practical tips for organizations who might listen to our talk today and feel inspired and say, hey, let's go on to this trail and let's go more into innovation. What would you recommend?
I think another important thing is also find your pioneers, right? Find who are the people in your organization who want to drive this change, because it's often these people who have the energy to put the investment, the personal investment on the journey. And that has been a game changer for many companies. Instead of starting from the CEO, nominating someone, no, just organize even a small hackathon, right? And say, okay, who are the people who want to join? And those are the ones that naturally are going to have the energy. And if you support them, if you give them enough space, they are going to start this spark that you were talking about before.
Do you have any example, Maria, for the open innovation that you have seen good examples that open innovation, this ecosystem with the working with another suppliers and other companies not in your industry? Like, for example, as a dental company, you can learn from the banking industry, or from banking industry, you can learn from the automotive industry. How you see this? Do you have a good example that you can share with us?
There's one example I like very much, that it was for hospitals when they are doing these scans, you know, these big machines that are when you have an injury in your knee or something, or in your head, and they put you through these scans. And there was a beautiful example, because they realized that kids, for example, were very scared into going into these machines, and they often had to repeat the procedure several times, which is very costly because every time they had to redo it. And they actually collaborated with the cartoon industry, right? And what they did was like creating a journey for kids when they were going into these machines, right? So they were kind of divers into the water, and they were looking for a treasure, and there were fishes around. So basically they created this whole experience with sound and music and images. And what they realized is that it was extremely successful, you know, that kids really had in their mind, instead of this scary machine doing horrible noises and everything is gray and you don't see anything, they went into this fantastic trip around the sea and so on. So I think that was a very nice example of mix between industries. And as you said, it's often very good for inspiration to see what others are doing. And I always say often innovation is not, and let's assume it's the chances that you will create something new from scratch is very hard, because there's already so much going on. So often innovation is having an original idea, an original product that you make great, right? By taking something from another industry, by listening to your customers. So it's not radical innovation, something from scratch, but it's something modified, let's say.
What a fascinating story, Maria. I keep remembering this when I talk about benchmarking. Since, I mean, there is this term, I think you know, this out-of-the-box benchmarking, right? Not in your own industry. And that's what a fantastic example. And I can really visually understand how that works, and how these kids dive into this scary scam thing. Unbelievable. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Maria that we've all discussed the challenges of the also innovation. That what are the barriers that to be innovative company? I mean, we already discussed from the types that what could be good to be innovative, but what are the barriers that you see in organization to be innovative?
Well, I think the first one, and also Christian mentioned it, is leadership. You have to have a leadership that believes in it, and that supports it. And if that's not happening, then it's very difficult to thrive. It's really complicated. Another barrier, as I said, is the companies that are very rigid and very risk averse by default. It's difficult to make this cultural change we were talking about, right? And there is where it's so important to have your pioneers, to have the people that are going to make it happen. But it doesn't mean that companies that are very traditional and that are very risk averse, they cannot innovate, but they have to be aware of their own culture and create this space where you can innovate, right? I think other barriers that I see often is being too close, right? To being in your own building and not listening your customers enough, not listening the industry enough, not listening other partners, suppliers, etc. Innovation doesn't happen on your own. It happens in an ecosystem. So if you're in your bubble, it's really difficult to do it, I would say.
And probably also putting pressure on people. You have to be innovative. You know, we need some innovative products and services by the end of the year or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't also help a lot, I think, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Wow, Murat, what a big number of insights, of inspirations, of tips and examples we have now on the plate that we can use and our listeners can use in their own organizations to drive innovation, and through innovation then to drive excellence to new levels, right, Murat?
To generate values to the world. So what's the definition of the innovation?
Yes.
Maria, indeed, it was excellent insight. Thank you very much. Would you like to add a few more words to the audience and about innovation, or in general for excellence also?
Maybe some inspiring words for those who are too scary and said, well, we understand what Maria says, but we can't do it. Please inspire the world, Maria.
No, you put so much pressure on me. Well, what I can say, and it's very short, I also applied it for my career. I would say it's worth to take the risk, right? You have to take the risk. It's worth it. You have to do it to survive, and also have fun on the way. I think that's important.
Fantastic.
And thank you for inviting me.
And I have to say, you know, I'm a fresh grandfather, and I have to say, I keep hearing your little baby in the background. It's wonderful. You know, it makes the whole thing so human.
Yes.
So
it's part of today's world.
Absolutely. And, you know, and this again tells a story, you know, about people, how to integrate life and business and innovation into one thing. It's all the same. It's all about people, and it's all about us.
Indeed.
Fantastic.
Indeed.
Yeah. Murat.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the great insight. It was a pleasure to welcome you, to have you here. Again, thank you very much, Christian, for your excellent insight again. And I wish you a very nice day, and also you enjoy in the San Francisco for the remaining day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day, guys.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you again, Maria.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.